very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you are having a pleasant start to your day. It's great to be back again this week with another episode of the Strata Talk Show. With that, I would like to welcome everyone to the 36th episode of the Strata Talk Show, brought to you by the Excel Academy of Real Estate. In this talk show, we'll be discussing issues and cases related to the management of stratified developments with various industry professionals. Joining us today, we have Mr. Kuan You Wai, who is the Director at PKN Building Solutions Sudihan Berhad, and also Ms. Chai Sim An, Proprietor at Chai and Co. Advocates and Solicitors. They'll be speaking on the topic of defect management in stratified buildings. If you have any questions for the speakers, feel free to leave them in the Facebook comment section below, which will be addressed in the Q&A section at the end of the show. Without further ado, join me in welcoming Mr. Kuan Yu Wai and Ms. Chai Sim An. Welcome and good morning
Thank
to you.
you. Thank you, Nafa. Hello, everyone. I am Chai Sim An. I'm an advocate and solicitor of the High Court of Malaysia, currently practicing at the Messrs. Chai and Co. Before I start, maybe I think I should thank the organizer, Excel Academy, for having myself and Mr. Kwan today. Okay, I think without further ado, I will take the beginning half of the session, and then Mr. Kwan will take the second half of the session. This session from 10 to 11. Okay, so today I will be sharing about the defect management in stratified building. Okay, let's start. So we start with what is strata, just a basic understanding of what is strata. Strata is basically where building or land is divided into individual lots. And then this building or land typically comes with a common property. So this whole concept of strata is introduced in 1985 when the Strata Titles Act 1985 is introduced. So strata property as a whole, they are subdivided to allow individual ownership of individual parcels. And then in addition to all these ownership of these parcel units, strata units owner, they also share the common property. So all these strata property is commonly in that we can see in condominiums, apartment, townhouses, and but even landed property. So a lot of misconception that landed property is there's no strata properties for landed properties, but when it is a piece of land and it's subdivided, so there could also be a possibility of landed properties in shared development. Okay, then we will move on to defect, our topic for today. So defect, the definition of defect is works are considered as defects or defective building works when the standard and quality of workmanship and or materials supplied for the works contain imperfection, shrinkage, or any other fault in the works. Okay, so it is the standard and also the quality of work and also and or the materials supplied. So in these category of defects, there are broadly two categories of defect, namely the pattern defect and the latent defect. So when we are dealing with defect, it's very important for us to firstly identify what kind of defects are we looking at. Is it a pattern defects or a latent defects? Okay, so what is pattern defect and what is a latent defect? So pattern defect are defects that are clearly obvious during the inspection, or something that is already known about, or defects that can be discovered through reasonable examination and testing. Means it's a very obvious kind of defect that with a reasonable inspection you can identify or determine it. Latent defect, on the other hand, are defects that are not apparent or readily detectable by either reasonable inspection or testing, even by a reasonably careful person skilled in the work in question. So usually these kind of defects, right, are only they only becomes apparent or noticeable or capable of being discovered only when they become pattern. Means it is something that more often than not it is when it has aggravated and then it appears, then only you discovered it. But do bear in mind though, defects are not latent if it's discoverable by the exercise of due diligence. So the test is that if you maybe like engage an expert and with reasonable inspection, you cannot find, even it is a defect, is the kind of defect where even with a reasonable checking and inspection and hiring someone who knows how to perform this kind of inspection, even after that kind of checking, you wouldn't be able to check it. So that kind of defects are categorized as a latent defect. So in this, this whole concept of patent and latent defect has been discussed in this case of Sigma elevator. So I mean, in this case, they describe that they are basically two types of defect, patent and latent defect, as what I have explained earlier. So, but they also went on and say that in practice, patent defect pose no real problems because they are like very easily detectable and can be addressed quickly. However, it is the latent defect which has a little bit of complication because it usually only manifests themselves years after the completion of the works. So, okay, and then okay, so once we have like identify what is this, whether the type of defects that we are looking at is a patent or latent defect, we look next at when did this problem happen, or when did you discover this problem. So you have to see whether uh, the period that we are looking at is in the defect liability period, which usually termed as a DLP period. So DLP period is when does it begin? It is usually upon the practical completion of the works and when the certificate of practical completion is issued by the contract administrator. So if when you discover the defect, it is still within the DLP period. So any defect, shrinkages, or other faults arising during this period due to defective materials or workmanship must be put right by the contractor at his own expense. So but note, however, though, not DLP period does not cover all developments. So you very much have to look into your contract whether there is a defect liability periods provided for in your agreements or contract. But for housing developments, because the agreements are provided by the HDA, so there will usually be a DLP period in your agreements. So when problem arises, you will have to check whether your agreement has this DLP period and whether you are within this DLP period. If you are within the DLP period, you can, as of right, contractually uh, ask the contractor to, at their own expense, rectify the defects. Okay, so what happened if it is after the DLP period? Meaning you have checked the DLP period in your agreement and you realize that it is now past the DLP periods. So building owners can actually make claim against the DLP period after the DLP period, provided there are proper supporting evidence and documentation. So, for example, if there are warranties, because certain items they comes with warranties. For example, like waterproofing. Waterproofing generally it depends on what the warranty provided by your provider, but generally they could be or maybe a 10 years warranty. So you may also exercise your warranty claim if the warranty still good and is in your possession. So there's also this case of the ARA Joint Management Body against Mammoth Land Development. So in this High Court case, the judge say that whilst the judge accept that arguably uh, you may not be able to make a claim in after the contractual defect liability period is over. There's no bar to the plaintiff to pursue an action in tort for negligence. So it's a different thing. So contract is meaning that you are claiming for a breach based on the agreement that you signed with the developer, but there is nothing to stop you to claim for negligence even after the DLP period. Okay, so in that case also, the learned judge also took note that about the fact that the claim was, because this case it was taken after the limitation period. We will discuss about limitation period briefly after this. The developer acknowledged that there is these defects all the while and provide assurance to the JMB that causing this delay to the commencement of action within the limitation period. So the court say that the court would agree that at the very least, sorry, okay, because it says that it will be unconscionable and inequitable to allow the defendant to rely on the Limitation Act to defeat the plaintiff's claim, because all this while the developer acknowledges this issue. Okay, so what are the other rights after DLP? So in this City Investment Serena Berhad case, it was held that the housing, even though the housing development legislation was designed to improve and supplement common law, it does not expressly or by implication deprive a litigation of a contractual remedy. And then there's also other example like the case of Tekem On to say that the High Court held that the retention of common law rights would also apply in respect of defects which were not discoverable within the DLP. I wouldn't be able to go into very much detail on this today, but in gist, the point is that even though it is after the defect liability period as provided contractually in your agreement, you still have other remedies to pursue your claim. Okay, I mentioned briefly on the Limitation Act earlier. So, sorry, so that Section 6 sub 1 of the, okay, what is limitation period? Limitation period basically means that the time frame you are allowed to bring a claim. So Section 6 sub 1 of the Limitation Act states that any action, any claim you want to make shall not be brought after the expiration of 6 years from the date of which the cause of action accrued. So this means that, for example, you found the cause of action, you identified the person to sue, and then you found what is the damages, and you found the cause of action to have happened today. You have 6 years from today to bring the action. So that is provided by Section 6 of the Limitation Act. However, there is this amendment in 2018. This Limitation Act 1953 was amended by this Limitation Amendment Act 2018. So there are like some exception to this 6 years time limit you can bring an action. So it says that this Section 6A, the amendment, state that notwithstanding Section 6 sub 1, the one I discussed earlier, Section 6A shall not apply to any action for damages or negligence not involving personal injury, meaning that they give extra time. Extra time is given to this 6 years limit for action for damages, negligence not involving personal injuries. But there are obviously some restriction to this uh, abridgment of time of 6 years. There are, so we can see at 6A sub 2 and 6A sub 3, which provides that among other, I will just quickly share that among others that such action cannot be brought after the expiration of 3 years from the starting date if the period of 3 years expires later than the period of limitation prescribed in Section 6 sub 1. Okay, so this is on limitation period. Don't think I have enough time to cover it in depth. Okay, so there is another, other than pattern defect and latent defect, one of the thing that I would usually like to highlight is you may also want to see whether this is a recurring defect, meaning that recurring defect means that this defect you discovered it during the defect liability period, and then repairs have been done to that defect, that particular defect. But what is recurring defect are defects that in which repairs have been carried out by the developer's contractor during the DLP, but maybe at some situation the root cause of the defect has yet to be rectified. So it came back. So it is important that you also identify whether this defect is a recurring defect. So not all defect that you discover after DLP is a latent defect. Maybe it's something that you have discovered during DLP. Repairs has been done, but it's just not fixed. Okay, who is liable? Who do we claim against? So in the situation where there is a breach of contract, generally only homeowners can sue, because for the very simple reason the agreement is entered between the homeowner and the developer. So the contract is between the homeowner and the developer. But this is generally because there are like some certain we also have to look at the situation, because section 2 sub d of the contracts act also provides that consideration for a premise may come from the premise or any other party does give right to a third party to recover damages. So we have to look at the cases lah. But generally on the breach of contract, only homeowners. But on the basis of negligence, though, we will see who owes you the duty of care. So, for example, like the developer or the developer's contractors owes you a duty of care to give you a property that is in a good condition. So the standard of a duty of care expected of an individual is that of a reasonable man. So how do you how then you were thinking like, how do I know, like, what is the test for negligence? How do I know whether this is a negligence? So negligence is defined as the omission to do something, means never do something, which a reasonable man guided upon this consideration, which ordinarily regulate the conduct of human affairs, would do. Means a reasonable man would do. So, or do something which a prudent or reasonable man would not do. So if you do or never do something which a reasonable man will do, it's also a form of negligence. Okay, you'll be wondering then, who is the right party to sue? Can I sue? Okay, homeowners can sue. How about management bodies? These are like the common questions that we receive most of the time. So in this case of a dual residency management corporation (MC), the Malaysian High Court has recognized duty of care of a developer of a construction projects towards the management body of a condominium. So this gives these management bodies the capacity to bring legal action against the condominium developers under the thought of negligence for all these defective construction and workmanship of the property. So this is also provided by the Act, which specifically states that JMB and MC can sue and be sued in his own name. Okay, but do take note also, JMV or MC, they are given a list of obligation under also under the Act. So if JMB or MC fail to do so, JMB or MC can also be sued other than the developer and the contractor. Okay, before I end my sharing, I would also like to share that, because many questions that we have always a lot of people ask us this question is that has anyone sued the developer before, or has anyone take any action? So the answer is yes. Recently, recently there are like a few cases. So like the most recent one is the Rawasan Rajawali case, where the court has allowed the legal action by 122 house buyers against the developer. And another one that is more recent is also the Country Garden Danga Bay one, where the home, I think the buyers have also like initiated an action. Okay, that's all from me today. Uh, I will give it to hand the sharing to Mr. Kwan. And then if you all have any question, can like leave it at the comments maybe. Uh, yep, Mr. Kwan.
Maybe we need to pass back to the MC, right?
Mr. Kwan, you can start your sharing.
Okay.
Do you need slides? No, right?
How do I share my slide? Yeah. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Um,
From
can
what I'm
you
seeing, you
see my
didn't need
slide now?
slides.
Is it clear now? Can you see my slide?
No, sir.
No.
I'll upload it for you.
Please. Okay. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Kuan from PKM Building Solutions. Thanks to Excel Academy for the invitation. So, we'll start our slide presentation now. Next slide. Okay. Bear in mind, when you take your building during the vacant possession, the building actually come with visible and invisible defect. So it is there since first day. Okay, you need to understand this concept because some people misunderstand that during DLP we only concern about uh, patent defect that become apparent. In fact, if you have a technology to dig out or to discover all the hidden defect, it will eventually become apparent too. So that's the relationship between apparent and intangible defects or hidden defects. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is some of the common patent defect that is can be identified easily with simple tool. Some people even use the golf cup to knock, on the floor. Uh, so once you can listen to the hollow sound, then you can mark it as a defect. Next slide. And of course, say for window sagging, the uneven gap on the top and the bottom, that is also due to poor workmanship, and it can be also classified as a patent defect or defect that become apparent. Next slide. Okay, with the water leveler, we can also easily identify the sagging floor or the misaligned door frame or entrance. So next slide. These are the hidden one. Hidden one in this case is the defect that is actually concealed underground. This type of defect can only be discovered when the hole or the crack line become bigger eventually, and then it start to burst. So and this type of defect normally take time to develop, because the vibration due to the imperfection in the copper fitting, the vibration can cause it to crack. And corrosion also take time. Look at the hole on the copper fitting. It is due to impurity causing it to have pit corrosion. So this type of corrosion need time to develop. Okay, so all this, if there is any poor material, well, it need time to develop. That's why it typically happen after DLP. After the first 2 years. So next slide. Okay, another type of latent defect also which also need time to develop is crack. But bear in mind, not all crack line is dangerous or structural in concern. Shear crack, the crack line at the edge of the beam diagonal that extend from the compression zone to the tension zone at both sides means true crack. It's actually dangerous. Okay, flexural crack is not dangerous. It only limited to one of the zone. Um, in this case, it's the tension zone. But yeah, it need to be repaired. It's not dangerous, okay? But except it's bigger than the allowable threshold, which is 0.3 mm, based on the BS 8110 structural use of concrete. Okay, when it comes to tension crack is dangerous. So all these need to actually have structural concern. Next slide. So BS 8110 actually require us to actually BS 8110 allow crack, but not more than 0.3 mm. Anything more than 0.3 mm on the structural element is known as structural crack, which need attention. So next slide. And another typical type of latent defect is differential settlement, crack caused by differential settlement, which is diagonal in nature due to one of the side of the foundation is weak as compared to the rest of the foundation. So this type of differential settlement is actually dangerous. Next slide. And latent defect due to leaking. This type of leaking can cause the concrete to crack. And one of the common mechanism is carbonation, whereby the corrosion of the reinforcement steel bar, the reinforcement steel bar will expand and it keep on expanding up to 600%, causing it to crack continuously from inside. Okay, so this is also a very common type of latent defect. Next slide. Okay, chloride attack. Chloride is available in our swimming pool, and it actually evaporate under the hot sun. I have opportunity to collect water sample on the swimming pool deck, and the water sample actually have chlorine ion, meaning that it actually evaporate the chlorine actually evaporate from the swimming pool because it's 2.5 times heavier than air. It float on the concrete deck. When it encounter water, it become chloride acid. So this is the mechanism of migration of chloride to the concrete deck. And when there is concrete attack, the corrosion can be accelerated because chlorine is a accelerator, or we call it catalyst of corrosion. In this case is a condo in KL, in Mont Kiara, leaking only 4 years. The beam actually reached a level of fatigue, near to fatigue. Anytime can collapse. So chlorine is not something that we should be taken lightly. Okay, next slide. And of course, if you have something like the calcium sediment, like this Batu Cave stalactite stalagmite, in layman term, I always describe it as the Batu Cave stalactite stalagmite. In fact, it is the dissolved soluble mineral from the concrete due to waterproofing failure. By virtue that waterproofing failure, say from the flat roof or from the toilet, it have cyclic wetting and drying, meaning that there is time for it to dry up. If the leaking come from the domestic pipe, the water will rush out continuously. There's no time for it to settle and crystallize. In this type of case, whereby you have time to settle and crystallize, there must be some form of cyclic wetting and drying. Sometimes it's wet, sometimes it's dry. So it have when it's dry, it have a time to form the sediment, and it is a indicator of waterproofing failure. So this also is a form of latent defect, and the caltamite that drop in on the floor is actually slippery. It's dangerous to the human traffic. Next slide. Okay, another typical type of latent defect which I would like to show you due to poor workmanship. In this case, this is actually a real case in Putra Height. Next slide. The I look at the spot because sometimes water it create a damp spot which is a bit dark, okay, dark in color. How to verify that it is actually dampness? We use a moisture meter like this. It have one anode and cathode, and if any water are present on the surface, I put it on the surface, the circuit will be completed and the more electric will be conducted. This type of moisture meter, or some people call it pottimeter, it has some weaknesses because the harder we push on the surface, the higher the reading due to the increased surface contact surface. But if you use this type of moisture meter, whereby no pressing is involved, you just need to put on the surface, then in the court, this will have a better weightage because there is no concern about the force needed to when we push in the moisture meter. Next slide. So I use a moisture meter to measure the damp spot, and yeah, it is confirmed damp. Then I asked my worker to climb up to the ceiling, and we discover the aluminum foil has been poorly installed, and whatever water that seep through the roof tile end up at this location. That's why that's why it went to the pipe shelf, the pipe riser, and it end up at the floor below it. So yeah, this is another type of hidden defect due to poor workmanship. So because even engineer or a surveyor who inspected the building during the vacant possession most likely unable to discover it because this is quite a hidden location. Okay, next slide. And okay, when it comes to who is the expert? Expert, according to Section 45 of Evidence Act 1950, there are people who are specially skilled. So I need to bring your attention to the point that if we suspect material failure, we actually need to bring in material scientists. And when we suspect workmanship failure, we need to bring in the specialist tradesman who have experience handling the work by himself. Uh, Lastly, when we suspect design, then we need to hire the designer. Okay, but bear in mind, when we come to the court for the court purpose, whereby for latent defect, we need to prove causation, and to prove causation, there is another part of the law known as Order 48, Rule 3, Rule of Court 2012. It actually say that the qualification is equally important. So when your side have an engineer and my side also have an engineer, then the judges will scratch their head, and then they'll think who is more qualified. That's why I always work with people who train the engineer, the lecturer, the professor, who carry DR, doctor, to become my side of the expert to help me to. So when I go to the court, my credential as well as my expert group of credentials, will be given higher weightage. Next slide. And yeah, this is what I meant by the having the expert. So the expert must have relevant experience, must be able to write, must also have ideally have experience giving testimony in the court. So next slide. So of course the role of expert must be doing the investigation, must be explaining to the lawyer as well as the judges and give testimony. Next slide. And ideally, being an expert witness, we need to be covered by professional indemnity insurance. Okay, for next slide. This is the rule of court that I mentioned just now. Um, the three parameter which is important in from the rule of court is the qualification or the experience of the person who went up to testify. Secondly, uh, is the test that is carried out. So are the tests derived from some of the worldwide recognized standard? And then is there any lab? Is the tool calibrated? Is the person who conduct the test competent person? So all this will be taken into account. And lastly, the literature induced by the uh, investigator to support his explanation. So if the literature come from very recognized university or expert or very well versed lab, then it carry much better weightage when it comes to the testimony in the court. So beside the expert witness must be also not only be independent but also need to be seem independent as well. So for all that, the customer, please do not try to influence as well as the lawyer. Please do not try to influence the judgment of the report or the expert witness, because uh, I think for clerical or for grammatical mistake, that is acceptable. But the judgment must come from the expert witness himself, not to be influenced by the solicitor as well as the customer. So the duty, we actually owe a duty to the court, even though we are paid by the customer. So next slide. This is what I meant by the rule of court. Okay, we must also have a summary saying that we have considered all the things that need to be considered. We believe in the correctness of our opinion. Uh, all this must be in our report. All these few sentences must be in our report, because otherwise it can be challenged and be thrown out from the court. So next slide. As a forensic investigator, yeah, we need to be independent and even be seem independent. Okay, so next slide. And in Limitation Amendment Act, of course, as an investigator, I need to prove something that is intangible. So I need to even beside telling the causation, I also need to understand that I need to identify what is the event of the action accrued. So, for instance, let's say a wall crack. Is it due to workmanship or is it due to the construction work next door, or is it due to earthquake trauma? All this I need to identify, and that part is not simple. No, it's not for a normal engineer or architect or even a building surveyor. See, and that part will be ideally by some form of scientist. So it have 15 years time bar, and being an investigator, we need to prove causation as well as the event of action accrued. Next slide. And yes, we also need to give in some situation there are more than one party that could be contributory to the damage. So we need to also identify who are the parties involved. So next slide. So okay, just to give you a scenario, the 15 years time bar, defect liability period, and after defect liability period. During defect liability period, if you fail to identify the defect that become apparent, you lose your right to claim the so-called defect that become apparent. But such clause doesn't limit your right to the defect which is not apparent. So, but for all this, in fact, if it is due to construction negligence, it always start at the first day of vacant possession. So, yeah, there is the implication of it. Next slide. And the more for whatever inspection or investigation that we do, we need to identify the deviation, any differences from the approved drawing, any deviation from the standard that reasonable workman or engineer or contractor should do, and then what is the condition of the design and workmanship, as well as condition that need further investigation. Next slide. So during the investigation process, you need to understand for negligence, the standard of proof is balance of probability, meaning to say that you must convince the court that whatever you prove, whatever the fact that you bring in, is more than 50% that you are correct or not. So that is a meaning of balance of probability. So next slide. So as a result, we must prove whatever the defect that we identify must not come from poor maintenance, must not come from poor vandalism, natural disaster, or force majeure. So we need to understand everything, every component in the building have their service lifespan, So waterproofing, it typically have 10 years warranty for new project. For indoor space, minimum 5 years. Bear in mind there is a legal implication from some of the case law that when you buy Mini Cooper, you don't expect Rolls Royce. So when I go to your building and I see, hey, this look like a Mercedes Benz, So do you know that the Rolls Royce of waterproofing carry 20 years warranty if it is done with good material, workmanship according to approved drawing. But the minimum one also have 10 years. So as a result, I must substantiate my report with some of the sample warranty letter and a justification of, hey, your building is, high-end park, So you deserve at least 15 years. So all this is a matter of evidence that I need to bring in, okay? So, but there is a weakness in the law itself. Bear in mind, residential building or commercial building are typically designed for 90 to 100 years. So if the 15 years is applicable to structure, that's very dangerous, Because let's say if any developer abuse this law and design a structure that lasts for 20 years, I think he is not at any fault if this law is actually is applied, word by word blindly, without further thinking. So it's still subject to acceptance in the court. So I would say that this is not a final thing. Okay. So next slide. Recurring defect, as what Ms. Sim Ann has mentioned, the defect that have been reported during defect liability period but not rectified correctly. Next slide. So this is what we meant. Okay. So it typically have 6 years of limitation, but it really depends on how you word your claim. So bear in mind, as I mentioned just now, when you receive the building during BP, it actually comes with defect that is apparent and hidden or latent defect. So it really depends on how you argue your case. Okay, so next slide. And I urge the audiences here to beware of cosmetic repair that doesn't address the root cause. And KPKT recommended EN1504, product and system for the protection and repair of concrete structure, which attempt to repair the building holistically, scientifically, to return the structure into original performance level, original service lifespan. So I urge you to not accept cosmetic repair, but try to apply EM 1504, whichever defect concerning structure. Next slide. And recurring defect, the avenue for recourse is, is it tribunal or is it court? So it will depend on the jurisdiction of the tribunal, which is 24 years, 24 months only. Okay, sorry, 24 months only. So, and then secondly, the amount, the quantum of claim. So, in fact, looking at the type of latent defect that I normally come across, um, most of them need to be handled by the court, need to be filed in the court. So when it comes to court and when you are a personal parcel owner, the cost of the litigation cost and the expert witness cost may be not affordable to many, So class action is a more feasible way. Next slide. So, okay, when it comes to investigation, so whatever the claim that is awarded, it must be able to repair the defect in good manner. And if let's say someone refer to JKR schedule of rate, sometimes JKR schedule of rate for JKR level, 100,000 is small project, But for defect, it only costs a few thousand or more than 10,000. There is no economy of scale that can make us to comply to the rate of JKR schedule. So this is actually very dangerous, especially when it comes to the technical report from the tribunal, because tribunal actually take the JKR schedule of rate, and I would urge you to challenge it with quotations so that you are not being aggrieved, by the system. Next slide. And the investigation process, these are the typical investigation process whereby we need to look into the plan, if possible, look into the bill of quantity so that we know how it is specified, interview the resident or the service crew pertaining to the history of any servicing done, visual inspection and come up with hypothesis and test our hypothesis. So if the testing doesn't reveal the expected result, then we may need to start the whole cycle again. Next slide. And when it comes to the protocol of inspection, there are three types. Visual inspection, which is very good for DLP period, for visually identifiable type of defect. But for latent defect, whereby defect that is not visible, so visual inspection is irrelevant. Instead, non-destructive testing is recommended. Non-destructive testing means it actually enhance or harness the scientific method of investigation to do testing not involving any destruction or opening or dismantling uh, to come up with a scientific conclusion. But in many situations, sometimes even non-destructive testing have its own limitation. In some situations, we actually need to dismantle or to hack the place, But whatever we hack or dismantle, we must document it properly, do it in due care, so that it doesn't create another defect. Okay? So bear in mind, when you hack, need to hack carefully, slowly, and gradually. Next slide. So, and then of course, visual inspection, there is some reference when it comes to QLASIC or CPDS 101 or JKR Paris standard. But as I said, it depends on which stage of the defect management that you are referring. For DLP period is okay, it's acceptable. Next slide. So non-destructive testing and inspection, there are a lot of standard from country like America, Europe, as well as Hong Kong. So some of them I have actually listed here. That let's say American Society for Testing and Material, tons of testing literature, tons of testing standard. British standard also carry a lot. American Architecture Manufacturer Association, this is a specific forensic test for the fenestration. Okay, and European norm also and Hong Kong standard carry a lot of other standard. Next slide. And KBKT recommend EN1504. So when it comes to EN1504, it actually prescribe a list of diagnosis as well as repair method that that harness science non-destructive testing method. Next slide. These are some of the phenolphthalein tests, endoscopic inspection, hard cell corrosion mapping, or even eco impact method, infrared imaging. All this is the typical non-destructive testing methods prescribed in EN1504. Next slide. And whoever who do the inspection must be competent. The equipment must be calibrated. No calibration, no talk in the court. Your report will be thrown out. Even for the slightest thing like caliper, need to be calibrated. Moisture meter need to be calibrated. Look at my moisture meter here. It has been calibrated. Even the pin type. Whatever we use must be calibrated. Even repulse hammer must be calibrated. Next slide. So our job is like investigator. Investigator that we are so good in peeping people. So we even have equipment like the endoscope to peep people, or to actually not to say peep people, is to inspect narrow spaces with this type of camera ULA. Which has been projected in my slices. Okay, camera ULA. Next slide. So for let's say for roof, we actually need to dismantle it. So when it comes to court, we have to be factual. When they come to court, when they come to judge, they will ask me a question: is this your opinion or is it a fact? Opinion is not accepted in the court. So things like suspect or things like general description, like all, every, is not accepted in the court. So try to avoid all this, and try to limit your testimony in the area that you are specialized or you have expertise in. So if you are not a material scientist, try not to testify in areas that you are not specialized in.
Dear viewers, I think Mr. Kuan is having some trouble with his connection. We are trying to get him back. So bear with us.
Can you hear me now? So can I proceed? Can I proceed? Anyone can give me a green light? Okay,
All good, sir. You can proceed.
can I? Okay. So of course, let me repeat this slide. So the word suspect, general description like all, everyone, try to avoid it. If you want to tell quantity, you need to be specific. How many percent? how many square feet, how many liters. All this must be clearly, uh, uh, expressed in the court. And then try to limit your testimony into the area of your expertise only. In the court, I would like to show you a book like this. How to write an expert witness report. This is actually, I bought it from America, through Amazon, of course, um, to help us to write technical report or expert witness report, that limit ourselves to all this type of area that is specific to your level of expertise. If let's say material failure, and if the opposing lawyer keep asking you, how do you know? Are you a polymer scientist? Are you a chemist? You will be kena tembak sampai mati. They are paid to question you like this. So do not be generous. Do not be do not testify something beyond your level of expertise. Okay, next slide. And if you can use graphic, there's even more ideal. So in the normal standard, normal SOP in the court, wear formal attire, present your IC, take oath, examination in chief by the claimant lawyer, and then the cross examination by the opposing lawyer, re-examination by the claimant's lawyer as well. So these are the typical SOP in the court. And the cross examination, yeah, that's how the opposing lawyer will dig out everything that they will test. They will try to challenge your credentials, try to challenge your qualification, try to challenge anything that they can think of. So get yourself ready. Okay, next slide. And of course, listen carefully. Do not try to argue so much, but also you have to bear in mind, if there is something that you want to express but both side of the lawyer hasn't brought it up, you need to give hints, so that during the re-examination, your lawyer have a chance to help you to express what you want to tell. You see, so this is something very important, because at the end of the day, you are there to tell your story. And if the questioning process deviate you from what you wanted to express, you better make it correct, by your own proactive action. Okay, next slide. And of course, be prepared, be objective, and control the flow and use the word wisely. Tend to be factual. Okay, next slide. And when it comes to justice, justice is not cheap. I always tell my customer, uh, it's like a war. Uh, it's like a war. If you have a very good expert witness report, try to enter into negotiation, so that at the end of the day, you just want the defect to be rectified. You see, or you get some compensation, reasonable compensation, because I have experience whereby my report is so strong, so factual, and then if the developer give it to any lawyer, all the lawyer will say you will lose. So if you have this type of report, try to negotiate. Try not to start burning money and see who have more money to burn. Because special damage for expert witness report, as well as for legal fee, will not be compensated fully most of the time. So try to limit your loss and the stress that you need to suffer from, by proper negotiation and communication. Next slide. So I'd like to share some of the case study with you. This is a case that I personally handled. Delamination that caused the road, with so much of uh, splashing debris. And I proposed infrared imaging, because under the hot sun, the delaminated surface with a layer of air or water will become hotter under the hot sun. Next slide. So I flew infrared drone. I can identify the hotspot easily, as well as identify the potential area that will soon have delamination. So this will justify should a thorough replacement be done, So with infrared imaging, it can be done, okay? Even to identify the potential area with problem. Next slide. And of course, we will do pull-off tests to justify the strength of the bonding of the cement strip to the surface, as well as close range inspection. We actually do a knocking test on every square meter of the wall, so that we can map out in 2D every box on my paper represent 1 meter square, and I can calculate how many percent has delaminated. Next slide. And of course, we also take sample from at the site, sample for area with delamination as well as good bonding, no problem area. So we did this water absorption test, we did composition analysis test, and we discover the material is good. The problem is what, surface preparation, lack of surface preparation, as well as different thickness. So this is the what the judge will need for making a decision. So we must present something so factual based on the lab from accredited laboratory, as well as concrete material scientists. Next slide. Another case. Okay, this one is basement with water leakage. In this case, right on top, coincidentally, I can found a hydrant. So conveniently, we do the dripping test. So during the dry season, it must be dry season. Wet season like this cannot be done. Okay, during the dry season, when we drip the water, then I will keep on taking moisture reading at the location A, B, C, D. Okay, then I'll plot a graph, and actually one day I discovered the moisture level dropped. So I went up to see someone has shut down the hydrant fully, no water drip, so it dropped. So I turn on the hydrant again, and it increased again. So this is another way that we prove that it's due to the surface water and water pouring failure of the basement. Next slide. And of course, the defendant will come up with all type of thing to say lah. They will pinpoint everywhere so long that they don't pinpoint themselves. Okay, so as a result, we must take precautionary action to investigate all the pipe. If possible, if there is a pressure gauge testing that can be done, we'll do that as well. We use infrared imaging to confirm that it's not due to the pipe. Use moisture meter to confirm all this, and we can also take the water sample to send to the lab. If it come from rainwater, the chemistry component is different. If it have E. coli, it can actually come from wastewater due to the waste pipe leakage. So this is all the method that we can use without damaging anything, okay, without leaking. Next slide. Of course, we can send the water sample to do X-ray fluorescence analysis to analyze the water sample into 84 type of mineral. And I will hire water scientists and geotechnical scientists to help me to interpret the findings. And from their credential as well as expertise, they can tell me what type of water is that. And nowadays, we even have electric resistivity tomography that can scan the floor at the depth of 15 meters, 45 feet, around 50 feet, to see what is the soil profile as well as underwater profile. That can also help me to prove. The more proof, the merrier. And next slide. Okay, in this case, we are talking about premature failure on the flat roof. I propose ASTM C1153, standard practice for location of wet insulation in roofing system using infra imaging. Okay, under hot sun, dry concrete and wet concrete. By virtue that water can retain more heat over time, at night the area with water pocket actually become hotter, and you can see at the photo infrared image at the center, it's actually hotter. Okay, and this can be easily identified with a calibrated motion infrared imager, and we need to use a capacitance type of motion meter that can measure up to 20 from the surface, of course calibrated, and to confirm the presence of water pocket. This method can tell me it's due to waterproofing failure. But what if my lawyer asks the failure is due to material, workmanship, or design? So the next slide. Then I will have to do something further. I will need to remove the cement scrape. And in this case, I was assigned to check 8 location. 8 location, 3 location didn't even have waterproof. Okay, how severe is the case? 3 location, no waterproof. I have won the case now. Okay, in short. Okay. Secondly, I used diamond cutter to cut the 5 location that have waterproof, and then cut it into like a, a tofu. Okay, cut like a tofu with diamond cutter, and then I use chaser to remove the waterproof membrane. Next slide. After that, I send it to the lab to measure the thickness of the waterproofing, because the thickness is an indicator of workmanship quality, and the thickness varies substantially. So workmanship fail. So, and then we also do similarity tests for waterproofing material of the same family but carry 10 years warranty. So my polymer scientist actually requested me to get some fresh sample from different manufacturer, and we did a similarity test using Fourier transform infrared technology. The technology identified the performing ingredient as well as and then of the good sample and the sample that I extract from the site. And by this, we discover is only 20% similar. So even the material also fail. So this is the solid type of evidence that is needed in the court in order to prove the causation. Okay, next slide. And this is my website and my telephone number and my email. Thank you for your time to listen to our talk. And Cement, any question to Cement or me?
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kuan and Miss Chai, for your insightful talks. We'll now move on to the Q&A segment where we'll hopefully clarify any questions our participants have on today's topic. So for the first question, we have a question from Miss Monica Chua Kim Hyuk. After the DLP period, external wall cracks were found and leaking into individual units. Developer repaired and subsequently, after a few years, walls cracked again. Can owners get developers to repair again?
This is a legal question, maybe
I
Cement.
yeah,
Yeah,
I will
maybe
take
Miss
I will take this
Chai
one.
can explain.
Yes, thank you, Monica, for the question. This is actually a very case to case basis question and situation that I wouldn't be able to give you an exact answer unless I know the case. Reason being, because you mentioned that has already been after a few years since the developer repair. So there could have been many variables that had happened. Maybe there are some renovation works conducted by the individual owners. So the main thing is, what is the cause of these external wall cracks found, and this leaking, whether it is caused by the developer's workmanship or material used, or is it some other reason? Assuming it is, after speaking with the expert, assuming that the expert found that it is caused by the foundation work, or something that is caused by the developer's negligence, then yes, the owners can explore the possibility of getting the developers to repair again. So the procedure will be asking the developers to repair again, giving them a time frame to execute the repairs. If they don't, then you may have to engage someone to rectify and subsequently get the developers to reimburse the cost. But that is assuming the cost of the external wall cracks and leaking is caused by the developers.
All right. Mr. Kwan, would you like to add anything to that?
Mm, I need to come down to the site and see lah.
Yeah, very case to case.
All right, cool, cool. For the next question, we have a question from Jen. Yeah. If the wall cracks near to the window area, PU injection is recommended. I think Mr. Kwan can take this one.
Now it depends on the nature of the crack. If it is due to natural shrinkage, which which is static meaning that it will not enlarge or shrink due to any other reason, then PU grouting is feasible. But in Malaysia, whereby heat is a issue, whereby moisture is an issue, because heat and moisture can actually cause expansion and contraction, or we call it volumetric changes. So, and then secondly, if the location of the building is next to the main highway, or yeah, or even let's say in earthquake zone, let's say for instance, eh, all this type of crack um, may come and go. So anyhow, we need to address to the root cause. So we need to have a thorough inspection to identify the failure mechanism and address it accordingly. So it need to be addressed at the root cause. So we need to find out what is the root cause instead of keep patching and keep on patching until to the until hari kiamat. So that's my recommendation.
All right. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. But before I end, I just would like to thank Mr. Kwan and also Ms. Chai for sharing your insights as well as your perspectives and also the participants for tuning in today. We hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having us.
Thank you. Thank you.